Welcome to Sunshine Art and Drawing. Today we're going to be making a Paper Mache Peter Rabbit Pinata. Try and say that 3 times fast. I'm just showing you the materials you'll need. You'll just need some plain balloons, some tissue paper, 2 packets would be great, but 1 if you've only got 1. You need some Clag Glue, some sort of flower-based glue safe for children, and a newspaper. You're also going to need 2 of the inner tubes from paper towel, so just the cardboard tube from the centre. You can also use toilet rolls if you don't have those, but this just seemed to be a bit easier because I had 2 on hand. And last but not least, you'll need a sheet of, I'm using canvas pad paper. You could use any kind of flexible paper, even printer paper may work. So stretch out your balloon a little bit and then fill it maybe about 1/3 full of air. You don't want it to be too full. So just sort of a round ball shape as I'm showing here, and grab yourself some of your newspaper and tear it up into strips. I've sped this up a bit because it does take quite a while, so just tear up a whole bunch of newspaper into as many strips, about from 1 centimetre to 1 inch wide. You want some thicker sort of strips and then some skinnier ones. It'll help sort of allow you to be able to make a stronger paper mache, so I'm just doing some thin ones now. And just keep tearing all that up. This is just my local weekly newspaper. I just thought I would use this up. Now I found the best way is to take a piece of newspaper and a roll, any sort of masking tape or tape roll, and then tape your balloon in the centre of that. It will hold the roll onto the piece of paper but allow you to turn it around so you can do all sides evenly. And you want to take your strips, make sure they're sort of skinny enough to work with, shake up your glue, remove that lid, it was a bit of a difficult one to remove, and cover this all in the glue and place that strip onto your balloon. I'm just going to place the first few kind of slowly just to show you how, and then I'll speed it up. So this is number 2, and I'm trying to cross them over. I'm trying to make sure that I've got a bit of strength there because it's going to need to hold like lollies, and that's going to be a bit of weight in there. So I'm just adding some more strips and as I go, and here's it sped up. So I'm just adding all of the strips around. This took a really long time. I was working on this, it took me like nearly a whole day just to do this part. So sort of give yourself a bit of time before the day to get working on this. And you just want to cover it across, sort of left and right, and also around the balloon. And then you can also use, one of my tips is to also use a spray bottle. If you use spray water and keep it a little bit damp, it stops the glue from drying, so when you put on the next layer, the glue will just sort of adhere to the previous layer and you'll end up with quite a good sort of strength in your balloon. And don't forget to flip it over and do the part around the tie, like the knot of the balloon. The second one is just the head. I filled the balloon even less, sort of to give it a bit more of a like a lemon shape, so I had a nose for the rabbit. And this part is just showing the larger balloon because it was the footage that I had, and this is adding the tissue paper. I just use plain white tissue paper, but you can use coloured tissue paper if you want to save a bit of time. But I chose the white because it would just make it easier to paint in the end. So just add it all around until you've got a nice thick layer. You want to do 2 layers of the newspaper and probably 2 layers of the tissue paper to make sure it's completely white. And you can use paper towel, crepe paper, tissues to do the same effect. You don't have to use tissue paper, it's just more convenient to buy a big packet of tissue paper for like $1 than it is to use a whole box of tissues. I'm just doing the smaller head part at the moment, the same sort of idea. Keep it sort of wet with some spray bottles. Those balloons, you can see I was just trying some different sizes, seeing if I could get the right size for the head. I'm just adding water and then adding more layers and adding more glue. Just make sure to not make it too wet, otherwise it will just take a very long time to dry. And once you've completely covered it, use your hands and a bit of glue to smooth it down as best you can. You can also use a few larger pieces of the paper, and I'm going to do that now, to cover it quickly to make that final layer nice and thick so that you can't see the newspaper through, because I really didn't want any newspaper to show through. So I'm just leaving these to dry, and as I'm doing that, I'm going to be doing the arms and the feet. So the first thing you want to do is take your paper towel roll and then split it into thirds. I measured it with a ruler and just measured what around about 1/3 was and then marked it. And I did it for the other one as well, and I flipped the ruler around because it has inches and inches and centimetres. So I just wanted to show that you could do it with inches or centimetres, just about 1/3 and then cut. So you've got 1/3 and then 2/3. So I just flattened it down a bit, and there goes my roll of glue. I just sort of flattened it down a bit and cut through. And then you should have a long piece and a short piece. And the longer pieces are going to be the arms, and the shorter pieces are just going to be the feet. And then take your longer piece, flatten it down a little bit, and draw like a semicircle or a U shape, and this will be the paw of the hand. So you want to do this for both. I'm just going to zoom in a little so you can actually see what I'm drawing. And I'm just doing it with a coloured pencil because that's what I had handy. So flatten that out a bit, and then grab your scissors and cut it around to make the paw shape. You can make it as detailed as you want, but we kind of want to make it like this because what I'm going to do is I'm going to be gluing that part together to make the paw. So you've got the rounded part of the arm of it and then the little paw of the rabbit. Do the same thing for the other one. You can either trace it or you can just put them back to back and then cut it, which is what I did. And I'm just going to speed it up because you do the same thing for the two little ones. Then get yourself some glue and glue them flat together, and I just pin them under my little board here just so that they dried. Once they're dry, you'll want to fold them the opposite way at the top, and this is how we're going to connect them to the bunny. So just fold them sort of one way and then rotate about 90 degrees and then fold the other way, so you end up with the feet. And for the little feet, I just fold it a little bit to make it flatter. So you've got 2 arms and you've got your 2 feet. Now the next part we're going to be working on is the ears. And this is the canvas paper that I'm using. It's more flexible than regular paper, and it sort of feels a bit like fabric. It's kind of like a cross between paper and fabric. If you don't have this, you could use like some thin cardboard or just about anything. Maybe 2 pieces of printer paper stuck together would probably be strong enough. And just fold it in half and trace your ear shape. I just kind of did a bit of an arch shape with a rounded top because I'm going to be folding it and folding in the edges to make it more ear shaped. Now I wanted to use this paper because it's flexible, and I wanted to be able to have one of the ears kind of flop down as like floppy rabbits do, and there's your 2 shapes. And I'm just showing you how once you've folded them and tucked it all in, that's how the ear shape will be. And same with that one. Next step is to paint them. It just makes it a little bit easier if you sort of trim them a little bit so they're neat and then paint them. And this paper is a bit strange. Once I got it wet, it started to roll, which I thought was a little bit weird. And I'm doing pink on the inside, like a pinky kind of brown, and then the outside a darker brown. And I'll just do the second one, doing the pinky sort of side from the inside and the brown for the outside. Doing all that brown and then all the pink on the inside. And just wipe down that because it was a mess. Okay, so once you've got your ears, you want to fold them into quarters and then staple. You see how I folded it there? I just added some glue for some strength because it was a bit floppier, and then I just added some glue around the top edge. I just cut little tabs and then glued them down just to give it a bit of an edge, made it look a bit better. And then after you've dried your 2 paper mache pieces for around about 2 days. It took mine 2.5 days, and this is first thing in the morning. I woke up quite early and cut them open. I'm going to have this in slow motion and try and make it so you can hear the sound in the background. It does make a weird sound. And I'm just going to do the second one as well in a moment. Popping that one to the side. And this is the larger one. They did come out really white. I was quite happy about that. You just grab the scissors and just trim off the knot. And it'll make a lot of weird noise as the balloon pulls away from the glue. It should pull away cleanly. If you do it this way, the balloon will immediately lose all of its air and shrink in, and as it does that it pulls itself away from the glue, which is what makes all that weird sounds and clicking and popping and things. And once that's all completely come out and popped out, you're going to need to be able to get the balloons out. Now I'm looking at these at the moment and I can hear the balloon inside it. I'm thinking to myself, how am I going to get these balloons out? There's no possible way I can reach into there. So what I did is I just grabbed a pair of scissors and just made the opening just enough to get a finger or two in just to get the balloons out. I did that on both of them. And then I've used this masking tape. It seems to be a good circle, and I cut little tabs all the way around and then folded those tabs in. I wanted to make that hole large enough that my hand could fit in there so that I could put the lollies and things in there when the pinata part came. So I tabbed all that down just to make sure it was nice and neat and clean, and then I've stapled on the arms either side of that hole. Once you put the head on, you're not going to be able to see the staple joins, so don't worry too much about that, and we will paint over the staples. Now this part is the head, and I'm attaching the ears now. So if I follow from the nose back, I kind of went about halfway up the head. You kind of measure it by eye, and then I poked through with scissors, and this was actually quite hard, so be careful with these scissors when you're doing this, or you might just want to start a hole with a pencil or something just to save your little fingers. And just make the slit large enough that you can fit the ear through and the staple goes through as well, because that staple is going to make it sort of a thicker point. So if you use a pencil to push it through, it will mean the staple will hold it in and the ears won't fall out. So do that for both ears, and then attach the little feet. It's not going to use these feet for standing up, they're more just for decoration. So just glue those on as best you can, and you can use paint later to make it look sort of neat and tidy. And now I'm just making up the paints that you'll need. For the Peter Rabbit, you'll need like a light blue for his jacket. You will need a pinky colour for his chest, and then a brown for the rest of his body. So at the moment I'm just doing a quick layer of blue for his jacket. Then I'm just going to do a bit of white on his arms. It'll just make the blue stand out a bit better. So I'm just going to do that. And because the hands are brown already, I didn't think it was necessary to do brown again on the hands or the paws of the rabbit. And I'm using acrylic white glue for this, acrylic white paint for this, because I found that using watercolour paints, if you're trying to get a sort of an opaque white colour, like a bright white, acrylic paint will always do better. If you try and do it with watercolour paints or palette paints or anything like that, you'll always find that the white is like washed out and it doesn't look as crisp. And you really want a crispy white for this, so. And just use your white anywhere where you're finding that you've got spots where colours aren't quite correct. And now I'm just doing the head, so quick brown and a pink kind of colour. I'm making this one up as I go. It's just brown and a flesh pink, because I didn't want it to be like dark sienna, because I thought that was just too dark for our little rabbit. And this does make it quite difficult. I grabbed a bit of paper towel and just put my fingers through the hole in the back with some paper towel. It just saves me painting my hand and also stops me from knocking off any paint. And it also gives me something to put it down on while I'm mixing some more paint. This is probably the most tedious part, was the painting, because I had to keep mixing more paint. I'd recommend trying to mix as much paint as possible to start with. When I went for the second coat, I used, I didn't use these palette paints, I used some tubed watercolour paint so I could mix a lot at a time. And I'd recommend that. Maybe pick either acrylic paint or watercolour paint of these three colours, like a fleshy pink colour, a brown and a light blue, and it will just make it a lot easier when you come to painting, because you can do it quite quickly. I'm just showing how I did the face. Now if you use two fingers and just push in to the head, you can make the little dips for his little eyes and add in the little mouth for him. And I'm just putting him down on something to help him stand up. And that's how I wanted to be able to put the ears, so the ears can flop over. Now I'm just showing how to repair the back of his head, because where we're joining him is not going to be the back of his head, it's going to be the underside. but it's just how his head came out when I did the paper mache. So I'm just going to fill the entire head with newspaper just to give it some structure and some strength, and also so that the little dots that I pushed in for his eyes will stay there. And I just am patching up the back with just some paper mache, so just a little bit of newspaper, and then I cut a circle around about the size of the hole and I've glued that on. It's just a circle out of white paper, and then paint the whole lot white so that it covers up any newspaper. And then once that white has dried, I don't think I waited long enough for the white to dry, to be honest, and just go over in the brown and pop that all the way around just to cover this up. This shouldn't take long. And then boom, you've covered up the back and you can't see that hole anymore. And once you've put a couple of coats of paint on, I can barely notice that there's paper there. So this next part I'm showing is just doing the detailing of his jacket. I kind of did a light blue and a dark blue to do the hem of the jacket. So I went all the way around and then trimmed off any excess from the feet and drew that all in. I also did the paws, so just put some little lines on his paws, and also did some lines for the hem of the sleeves and a little collar. And I've just grabbed some gold paint because he has little gold buttons on his jacket. You could even like just glue some little gold dots, or maybe even do them yellow or something similar. If you found you've coloured the blue and you can't colour over it, if you just did little dots white, then you should be able to just put any kind of colour over the top. And I'm just doing the little fur bit around his chest and around his waist. And I'm just going to detail the eyes. So you need to do black to do the edges of the eyes and the pupils, and then his eyes are brown, so you just do a little rim of brown and then add in some white to show the whites of his eyes, and then a little white spot in his pupil as a little glint of light. So there's his eyes done, and I'm just going to add a little bit of brown and white together and just put a little bit on his nose, just a little sort of light brown. And that's his body and his head all completed. Once you've got 2 coats of paint and you've painted him all over, it's time to fill your pinata. So just add some tissue paper. I tried just 1 sheet of tissue paper to begin with, but it didn't seem like enough. So I put in a good 2 or 3 sheets in the bottom, and then I've added, this is probably about 800 grams of lollies, so maybe about 1.5 pounds of lollies. And I'm using bamboo skewers to attach the head to the body. This took a couple of tries, so that's why it's kind of off camera for a bit, but you can snap these bamboo skewers pretty easily, and if you put 2 skewers pointing up, you can push the head down to allow it to attach. And then in the end, what I did is I pushed the head down, and then I placed glue all around the neck. And by pushing the head down to the neck, and then setting it upside down, I was able to make the head stay attached to the neck so it didn't come apart. What you can also do is you can put some bracing bamboo skewers from left to right in his arms if you want to give a bit of strength there. So just continuing to push his head down, making sure those skewers are all the way inside his head. And now he needed time to dry for the glue, and that took probably overnight, so I just sort of set him up after I was finished. I found that I put him upside down in that little bowl that you can see in the background and leaned him up against something so he wouldn't fall, and then added glue all around his chin and his shoulders to attach it to his head. And now that glue has dried, he is definitely sort of sitting quite happy, and his head is firmly attached and his little floppy ears are flopping all around. And this is just some close-up so you can sort of see how you can adjust his ears to sit any way you want them to, like flop them forward. And here I'm just showing a bit of a close-up of his tummy and his head, his little bunny nose and his little golden buttons. And that's just a close-up of his face and his body, and those are his little feet. As you can see, he doesn't really sit on them. The weight of the lollies inside him has kind of made him have a flat little bottom that he sits on. And there's his little hands, and he's got bracing at the moment, so you can actually pick him up by his hands and it will hold him like his weight. And there he is. He is all complete. Thanks so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this one, let me know in the comments below. Please subscribe and give this one a like if you like my little crafty Peter Rabbit Pinata. This has been Sunshine Art and Drawing. You have a sunshiny day.